We're now joined by ZAL CLEMINSON. How are you today?
I'm cool, Jay. It's good to talk to you, man. All this way from the UK.
Absolutely. You know, a little distance, but, music keeps us all together. It's like one big world.
It sure does, yeah. You sound like you're next door.
I might be. Now, take us back. Growing up in England, who were some of the first? Oh, Scotland. That's right. Who were some of the first, artists that you had seen, whether it be on the TV or you heard on the radio or whatever that really inspired you, kind of really rocked your world, wanted to make you, pick up the guitar and do it yourself?
Yeah, it was kind of when we were at school, basically, probably about 14, 15, and we were getting into, I just started to hear the old sort of rockabilly stuff like Elvis, obviously, and Bill Haley, Buddy Holly, from that era, the late 50s into the early 60s, and that was something that came to me right away. I just thought, wow, this is a nice noise. I like what this is all about. And I love the sort of sound of the guitars as well at that time. And it kind of just went from there. It was like into Chuck Berry. Of course, everybody sort of recognizes the sort of what Chuck Berry has given to the whole rock and that style of guitar, that sound of guitar playing. And that was just something that really I kind of really dug, and I thought, wow, this is great. I need to learn about this. And so I just got guitars. We got a little band together at school, like you do. We were still at school. We played gigs at the weekend, and then we went back to school on Monday, and that just kicked on from there. We kind of listened to some other players like jazz musicians like Wes Montgomery and Kenny Burrell and people like that. And I thought, wow, that's a nice sound. How did they do that? And it was just a kind of learning process, I guess, all the time. You're listening to music. Of course, the Beatles came along, the Stones came along, and that was it. You got the image then. You had the kind of personas that were becoming, larger than life, and that kind of got you. You just really got your juices flowing in terms of wanting to be in a band, in a rock band, effectively.
Yeah, you saw all these thousands of screaming girls. You thought there must be something there.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, if they're excited, there must be something there. Yeah, but it's always amazing, to me that I talk to so many of the great British, artists, the Scottish, the Europeans. Mm-hmm. And so many of their heroes were those American, like you say, Chuck Berry and the Eddie Cochrans and the Little Richards and all these guys. And it's kind of like this mutual admiration society. We go back and forth over the pond. The British inspire us, and then the Americans inspire you, and goes on and on.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. The band we had at school, our influences were basically Tamla Motown, Stax. It was black soul music we wanted to listen to, black soul music we wanted to play. And, we would listen to all this sort of stuff from Stax, from Tamla, and so on. So it was like you were sort of copying those bands, learning how those songs, learning to play those songs. Yeah. And it was just that groove, that whole thing, that whole rhythm thing, everything about that. And then, as you say, the British exported the kind of, the Who, the Beatles, the Stones, it was almost like, this constant exchange of cultural ideas, musical ideas.
It goes back and forth and continues today.
Totally.
So now tell us about, I know you were in a couple bands coming up the way, and then one of them, morphed into the sensational Alex Harvey band. Talk about, meeting Alex and kind of forming that super group amongst you and him and everybody.
Well, we were in the band in Scotland, kind of heavy metal band, heavy rock band called Tear Gas, and we'd made a couple of albums, and we were kind of going around in circles a bit, not knowing quite what to do, sort of trying to find a singer, and then we just sort of put together, this idea that came up from a friend of ours had said, Alex is looking for a band. We knew of Alex. We hadn't met him, but we knew of him. We knew of his big band, soul band he had, and. So this meeting was arranged. To cut a long story short, we arranged a meeting. We got together. We had a first rehearsal. He just asked us to, we just went into this little rehearsal studio in Glasgow, and he says, right, can you play this riff? And he played the riff for Midnight Moses, one of the songs from the Friend album. And he says, can you play this riff? And we went, yeah, we just beat the shit out of it, and it was like, okay, that'll do, guys, that sounds great, and that was it, we kicked off from there.
Now, what made that band, special in your eyes? Was it the songs, the chemistry? What was the greatness?
A bit of everything. Alex had a real passion for lyrics and for the whole kind of theatrical thing that he wanted to put. You could tell that he wanted to put together some kind of show, and he just kind of brought the band out of themselves. We were quite introverted on stage, but off stage more extrovert, and he tried to sort of capture that and trying to get everybody into the whole idea of performing. And I think what he brought really was the lyric content and the attitude of being on stage and putting on a show and kind of, like just going out there and saying, right, we don't take no prisoners, we just go on with it, and we sort of try and blow people away. And and it built a real confidence around the band's show and what the band were all about. And the reputation just sort of spread from that. It was quite meteoric at times.
Sure. Now talk about the idea of obviously putting on the mime makeup and standing out in that regard.
Well, that came about when we were playing small clubs. One of my things that I always used to get involved in was like parodying, like a parody of the rock Guitar Hero. Mm-hmm. And I used to find it quite amusing, all the angst that guitar players go through, the faces they make, all the stances they have, all the posing that they do. And I found that quite hilarious. And I thought, well, kind of ape that, like parody that. And I used to make all these sort of faces and all these kind of movements and trying to, as if I was like, trying to be a guitar hero. But as the gigs got bigger, our manager says, look, we can't see what you're doing back in the hall, further back in the hall that people can't see what's going on. They want to be able to see what you're doing. So we went through a few sort of stages of trying to find ways of projecting that. And we came up with the idea of the mime face. We went to see Marcel Marceau, of all people, the man himself, and came up with the idea of the mime face, which just sort of allowed us to project that kind of persona right further back into the hall and let more people see what was going on. And it was it became a bit of a trademark. It worked so well.
Yeah, well, you definitely stood right out. I mean, besides putting the name Sensational in front of the band, things really went from there. Now, obviously, your success in the UK and all that, really took off. Was that through like Top of the Pops, or what were the big breaks?
Yeah, I mean, we toured. The first thing we did was we signed a record deal, and we were like locked into a kind of contract of recording, touring, writing, rehearsing, recording, touring. It was just like this treadmill, And so once we got off the ground, we just gigged everywhere, we played everywhere we could in the UK. We got some support tours, good support tours with like Slade we supported, and we did some nice big festivals with The Who around London, football stadiums and stuff like that. And so the word got out, the band started to go down really well. We could tell, it was one of those bands, I think, in a way that you either loved them or you hated them. We could see that people really took to the band. But there was also a side of the band that I think people thought, these guys are a bit odd, they're a bit strange, Yeah. And the theatrics they didn't quite take to it at times. But overall, there was a kind of real powerful cult following that came through. And that just built up and built up. We got to Reading. We had one year we were on the bill, way down the bill at Reading. The next year we were headlining in festival. So that was the kind of meteoric sort of rise within a year that we went through. And we just kept churning out albums, touring, and just stuck to that whole sort of concept basically.
Yeah, I know. The business changed so much. These days, if you got a hit, you could tour for 2-3 years for it. Back then they expected a new album every 9 months or something, and you had to tour in between. Yeah, I think the Beatles were putting out 2 albums a year, just with their
contract. That's where we got to. It was almost like 2 albums a year. They were just like you were paying back the record company for that big advance.
Right. Well, I know it was a little tougher going here in the States to get that big break, but I understand Cleveland, Ohio really welcomed you guys and, was hopefully potentially that foothold. What do you think it was about the Cleveland audience that took to the band?
I don't know. There was a few other towns as well. I think it's more to do with the kind of working class sort of, these are kind of working class industrial sort of areas, I think. And the band coming from Glasgow and the way the band sort of, the attitude that we had, and maybe the kind of material that Alex was singing about, the kind of songs, the kind of a message that he was trying to get across. I think it just appealed to a real working class audience, and obviously Cleveland was big, Pittsburgh good as well. Even in the East West Coast, where the band had a kind of New York, LA, it was kind of, we had a kind of a cult following again there, in the Midwest, the in-between stuff, where it was the down-home rock audience. I think we were just a little too theatrical and a bit strange for the old boys,
Sure. Well, what was it like to come to Hollywood in LA for the first time?
Well, little guys from, we were just like from Glasgow, little working class boys from Glasgow. To get to LA is like, it's like you're looking at Hollywood. You're looking at this sort of dream sort of existence. And for us, it was fantastic. We just loved it. We loved every minute of it and just soaked it up, basically, and kind of get involved in the whole thing.
Sure. Yeah, all the record labels and the beach and the girls and the palm trees. That's it's not too hard.
Yeah. That's a part of it, yeah.
But
but it was also an insight, in terms of seeing the bigger world and seeing a bigger picture and seeing how these cities and people that live in these cities, how they operate and how they work and how they go about their life. And there's a kind of a social connection there as well. And it's interesting to see that kind of, how that the business side of Hollywood, if you want to call it that, how that works, and even with the music business that's attached to that.
Sure. Did you do any TV tapings or anything in Hollywood? Did you get on any of those shows?
I don't think we did TV in Hollywood. We did some shows in London that went out. Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Okay.
And then we did one down in. It was with, of all people, we were on the same bill as ABBA, and it was, I think it was Santa Monica Civic.
Oh, Santa Monica Civic, yeah, out by the beach, yeah.
Could have been that, yeah. And but no, we didn't do any. That was about the only one we did in terms of television or anything like that. But we played the Roxy, we played obviously the Whiskey.
Right.
Great gigs, fantastic time.
Yeah, well, that's great. Quite a interesting era. And tell us, as far as becoming, a member of Nazareth. I know that it was a little time between maybe, but you got some fellow Scots, and obviously they had Hair of the Dog and Love Hurts and all that out there. What led you to join the great Nazareth?
Well, they were, as I say, we were like old friends, We'd known each other for a long time. We worked for the same management company, and we'd worked together on Dan's solo album as well. The whole band had played on that. And the guys contacted me when the Harvey band had split up. I hadn't really got involved in any other music. I was driving a taxi cab around London just to sort of pay the bills and stuff like that. Yeah. And the guys contacted me and they said, "Look, do you want to get together? Do you want to come over?" They were recording the No Means City album at the time on a mobile studio on one of the islands of the UK, and I went over, and I think more than anything, they were looking for a songwriter. They were looking for some input in terms of songs and stuff like that, and ideas. So I just sort of started throwing some ideas around with the guys, and they were like, "Yeah, this is good, that'll do." And we kind of kicked it off from there, and we played a bit on that album. And then when they took me back over to the States, they were doing a bit of a tour, big tours. They took me out to just sort of have a look and see what sort of gigs they were playing. And I was like quite amazed actually how big the band were. I hadn't really realised just how big a band they were in terms of States and Canada and so on. Yeah. And that kind of, I thought, right, okay, that sounds cool. I'll just get involved in this. And that's how it kicked off. We got the other album done, recorded with Jeff Baxter producing the Malice and Wonderland album.
Now,
that was about a couple of years I spent with Naz, yeah.
Sure. Now, was the Malice in Wonderland, was that recorded in L.A.?
It was recorded in Bahamas, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And mixed, I think we took it to L.A. to mix it.
Okay.
A bit mixing in L.A., yeah.
Now, that's an interesting combination, Jeff Baxter coming from the Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan, Was that the record label suggestion, or how did he become?
I don't know. I'm really not sure. I don't know how that came about, to be honest. It was amazing to meet him, because obviously big fans of the Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan and all that. Oh, absolutely. And it was like meeting a bit of a hero at that time. But he was a cool guy, he was cool. But I was never quite sure about, was this a Nazareth album with these songs, really Nazareth songs? It never kind of, I don't know. It never quite gelled for me in terms of the overall style of the music and the direction of the band. With that album in particular, it didn't seem to kind of fall into place with some of the earlier, heavier stuff.
So maybe they were getting a lot of pressure from the record label to come up with a hit, and it kind of wasn't necessarily their sound.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk about Holiday, because obviously that was a big breakthrough, for the band at the time. Like you say, it might not have been a hair of the dog, type sound, but, talk about coming up with that song and, the rest of the songs on the album.
Yeah, I had a few songs lying around, and I had a few ideas that I had. Hearts Grown Cold was one of them, a song that I just played around the house and I thought that's quite a nice tune, and it sounded more like a country song to me. And even some of the songs like Holiday, they sound more kind of a little bit more lightweight, a little bit more poppy, if you like, but catchy and commercial. And I think Manny, the guitar player, and I, we kind of put the songs together basically from scratch, and knocked our heads together and got the rest of the guys to kind of follow what we were offering. And it was nice. It was good to do, and they're good guys to work with, really professional players, and so it was an enjoyable time, an enjoyable experience, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about working with Manny Charlton, because obviously he was a force in the band, produced a lot of the band's music. What was it about him? What do you think his strengths were?
Well, Manny just had a lovely feel for just capturing that kind of rock edge. He didn't overcomplicate things. He had a style and he had a technique that was just sort of suited the kind of what Naz were all about, and I think that's what came through, and especially on the heavier stuff, the hair of the dog type stuff and all that. And so it was. I think he had his head really into that sort of style of music, and he knew exactly what he wanted to hear in terms of the production, and he made a really, really nice job of it, I think, for Naz. And he's very creative, he's always looking to do something a little different, man. He was always looking to kind of keep moving things forward. And that's what I liked about being with him. It was always looking to do some fresh ideas.
Yeah.
To get some fresh ideas. Didn't really matter where they came from or whose idea it was. It was just a kind of let's keep the ball rolling, so to speak.
Sure. Very, very important. Now talk about Dan McCafferty. Obviously his voice was very unique, and again, gave us some classics from the ballad like Love Hurts to, the hair of the dogs. What was the strength about Dan?
Well, he just had that tone to his voice. It was just, as you say, it was a kind of a unique tone. It's a kind of like, I suppose maybe Bon Scott would be somebody in that sort of ballpark as well. Mm-hmm. So it just stood out. It was the icing on the cake, I think. And when you've got a singer like that, it's such a distinctive frontman with that kind of sound. I think it just goes a long, long way to giving the band its full identity and really getting across to people, I think. And he was a very good frontman, a great performer, great communicator with the audience as well, a nice personality. It worked really well.
Yeah. Well, obviously the music has continued to hold up, and a lot of people consider Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses one of the top frontmen today, not only fronting the new Guns N' Roses reunion, but also singing with AC/DC. But if you ask him who his favorite singer was, Dan McCafferty was one of the first people he mentioned.
Yeah, I was going to mention Axl Rose along with Bon Scott, but Axl Rose as well. I found quite a lot of similarities when I was with Naz and listened to Guns N' Roses. I thought these bands are, they're quite similar in their approach, and I think they took a lot. I think they took a lot. Maybe I don't know if they took a lot from each other, but I know that Naz took quite a bit from Slash and the whole kind of Guns N' Roses thing. I think they were quite keen to almost in a way kind of follow their direction, if you like.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing, and I know they, GNR covered Hair of the Dog, and still, really carried a flag for Naz. Now, obviously, you lived in England and the UK and Scotland during the you know, the first big glam movement. You say touring with Slade and, of course, T-Rex and Bowie and Sweet and, you know, all the bands. I mean, you can look back and chuckle over, you know, some of the outfits and stuff now, but what was the excitement like? What was the greatest memories of that glam era?
Yeah, it was. It was a kind of that whole asexual kind of approach. You know, it was a Bowie thing. You know, the kind of, you know, the you know, male-female thing, you know, all that sort of stuff, the sexuality of makeup and the outfits. It seemed like a time when you could just do what you wanted, effectively, break the rules and just turn up and look and, you know, perform and play and sing exactly what you wanted, in a sense. And there was so there was a kind of a rebellious sort of buzz about it all, I think, at that time. A bit like the 60s. The eras seemed to be, you know, the 60s had its own thing, and the 70s sort of came up with this sort of glam rock, and everybody seemed to kind of jump on the bandwagon. And of course, that's the way the music is, in a way. You know, as I say, it goes in sort of decades, if you like. And so people jump on the bandwagon, and then people look at you were mentioning earlier about hit singles and the commercial aspects of it all, that you had to kind of follow suit in order to, the record company was desperate for a hit record, so the whole Top of the Pops thing, which never felt comfortable for Sab to be in that kind of, to be put into that sort of ballpark. Because the pop we were playing at that time was a real broad cross-section of musical styles, and I think it didn't do us a lot of favours in terms of capturing that mainstream rock audience. I think the band just kind of became a little too diverse and a little too indulgent in our music, our choice of music and songs. And but we lived with that, you know. It was fun and it was good to do, but it never quite hit home, I think, with the mainstream rock audience. But again, there's certain songs and